Imagine promising to protect pubs, acknowledging they'll struggle, even suggesting you're working on extra support, and then having your chancellor turn around and say, actually, no, we're not doing anything. That's exactly what's happening right now with Labour and Britain's pub industry. Keir Starmer has admitted that pubs will struggle with the new business rates changes. He's talked about working with the sector, about providing additional support, about understanding the challenges. And then Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor who controls the purse strings, has reportedly said, absolutely not. We're not changing the tax policy. So pubs that are already closing at a rate of 8 per week are being left to sink, while the government offers them nothing but warm words and vague promises about licensing freedoms. Industry figures are furious. Labour MPs are being barred from pubs across Britain. Think about that for a second. Publicans, the people who run these establishments, are so angry with Labour that they're banning Labour MPs from entering. That's not just political disagreement, that's genuine fury. These are business owners who feel betrayed, who feel like they've been stabbed in the back by a government that promised to support them. And the ultimate symbol of this fury is that Rachel Reeves herself has been banned from her local pub in Pudsey, West Yorkshire. Your own constituency pub banning you is the political equivalent of your mom refusing to let you in the house for Christmas. It's humiliating, it's personal, and it shows just how badly Labour has misread the room on this issue. Keir Starmer, in his infinite wisdom, appeared to open the door to extra support. Speaking on Monday, he told LBC, "We're talking to the sector, particularly hospitality and pubs, about what further support we can put in, whether that's licensing freedoms or other measures." Licensing freedoms. Let me translate that for you. Licensing freedoms means things like allowing pubs to open later, or have more outdoor seating, or put up signs without as much red tape. Now, don't get me wrong, reducing unnecessary regulations is good. Pubs should have more freedom to operate. But when your costs are going up by thousands of pounds because of business rates and national insurance increases, being allowed to open an extra hour isn't going to save you. It's like someone setting your house on fire and then offering you a slightly nicer garden hose to put it out with. It's not proportionate to the problem. And here's where it gets really insulting. The Telegraph reports that the Treasury is insisting it will not change the tax policy itself. So Starmer's out there saying, we're working with the sector, we're looking at extra support, we understand the challenges. And simultaneously, his Chancellor and the Treasury are saying, we're not actually changing anything about the policy that's causing the problem. So what Starmer's offering isn't real support, it's the illusion of support. It's making sympathetic noises while doing nothing substantive. And the industry sees right through it. Because pub owners aren't stupid. They can do math. They know that licensing freedoms don't pay the bills. They need actual financial relief. They need the business rates policy to change. And Labour is refusing to do that. TV chef Tom Kerridge, who owns pubs and restaurants, has been speaking out about this issue. He revealed that Peter Kyle, the business secretary, is being incredibly supportive, but has to convince the Treasury. Kerridge told LBC that he'd asked Kyle for support at a recent event and was told the Treasury needed to be convinced to sign off the money. Kerridge said of the prospect of a tax reduction, "From the conversation with Peter, that isn't something that he has control over. That sits in the Treasury. He has a meeting with the Treasury next week. He's presenting the case. He was incredibly supportive." So Kyle wants to help apparently, but he doesn't control the money. Rachel Reeves controls the money, and she's saying no. This tells you everything about how this government operates. Different ministers can be as supportive as they want, can make as many sympathetic statements as they want, but if the Treasury says no, nothing happens. And Rachel Reeves has decided that pubs don't deserve help. Whether that's because she genuinely believes the transitional measures are sufficient, or because she's ideologically opposed to what she sees as corporate welfare, or because the government is so broke from their own spending that they can't afford to help, the result is the same. Pubs are being left to fail. Starmer's comments to GB News are particularly revealing. He said, "We're working with the sector, particularly in hospitality. Obviously, there were reductions in business rates in place because of COVID, which were going to come to an end. There are then transitional provisions to help. The overall rating level is going down, but I do acknowledge for pubs and others that the revaluation means that they will struggle in relation to the business rates applicable to them. That's why we're working with them." Let's unpack that. First, obviously, the COVID relief was going to come to an end. Yes, everyone understood that at some point the temporary relief would end, but the question is whether this is the right time, given that pubs are facing multiple other cost increases simultaneously. Second, there are transitional provisions to help. This is the Treasury's main defense. They're saying, look, we're not just ending relief and leaving pubs to deal with massive overnight increases. We're capping increases at 15% next year. That's the transition. But here's the problem. 15% is still a huge increase, especially when you're already barely profitable. And it's only for next year. After that, the cap goes away and bills can increase more. Third, Starmer says the overall rating level is going down. This is technically true, but misleading. The government is reducing the multiplier, which is the percentage of rateable value you pay as business rates. So yes, the rate is going down slightly for everyone. But for pubs, the revaluation of their properties means their rateable values are going up significantly. So even with a lower rate, they're paying more overall, because it's a lower percentage of a much larger number. It's like saying, don't worry, we're reducing sales tax from 20% to 18%, but we've also quintupled the price of everything you buy, so you'll actually pay way more than before. It's mathematically dishonest. Fourth, I do acknowledge for pubs and others that the revaluation means that they will struggle in relation to the business rates applicable to them. Starmer admits the problem. He knows pubs will struggle, and yet his solution is, we're working with them. Working with them how? What does that actually mean? It means licensing freedoms, which we've already established won't solve the problem. It means having meetings and listening to concerns. It means making sympathetic statements. But it doesn't mean changing the policy that's causing the struggle. That's not working with them, that's pretending to care while stabbing them in the back. The new approach has overlapped with what is in effect the first reevaluation of the size of hospitality businesses for 6 years, which alone would also mean a jump in tax bills. So this revaluation was going to cause problems even without the removal of COVID relief. Property values have increased, businesses have expanded or improved, and the rateable values reflect that. So business rates were going up anyway. And then you layer on top the removal of the 75%, then 40% relief, and you've got a massive increase. The timing is terrible. If the government cared about pubs, they would have either delayed the removal of relief or increased the transitional caps, or found some other way to cushion the blow, but they didn't. They just let it all happen at once. The Treasury is confident that the transition measures, such as capping bill increases next year at 15%, are sufficient to help pubs ride out the reforms. The Treasury is confident. Based on what? Based on talking to actual pub owners who are telling them they're struggling? Based on the fact that 8 pubs are closing every week? Based on the fact that Labour MPs are being banned from pubs across Britain? Based on that, no. The Treasury is confident because they've done their spreadsheets, they've calculated that the numbers work in aggregate, and they've decided that individual pub failures are an acceptable cost. That's how Treasury thinks. They look at macro numbers, not micro realities. They don't care if your specific pub closes, as long as the overall economy isn't too badly affected. It's technocratic thinking at its worst. But industry figures are rejecting that position, and the idea that changes to licenses alone will be enough to protect pubs from the major business rate bill increases over the coming years. Of course they're rejecting it, because it's nonsense. Licensing changes are nice, but they don't address the fundamental problem, which is that costs are going up faster than revenue. Pubs operate on thin margins. Most make a profit of less than 10%. When your costs go up by 15% or more because of business rates, and you're also dealing with higher wages because of national insurance, and higher energy costs, and customers who have less money to spend, the math doesn't work. You can stay open an extra hour, you can put more tables outside, but if people can't afford to come to your pub, or if you're spending more than you're making, you close. It's that simple. The 8 pubs closing every week statistic is devastating. That's over 400 pubs a year. These aren't just businesses, they're community institutions. Especially in villages and small towns, the pub is often the only communal gathering space. It's where people socialize, where community events happen, where you can escape your house and be around other people. When a pub closes, especially in a small community, something irreplaceable is lost, and Labour's policies are accelerating these closures. They're
They're making it harder for pubs to survive, and when confronted with this reality, they offer licensing freedoms and warm words. It's insulting. The political optics are also terrible for labor. Pubs are about as British as it gets. They're culturally significant. They're associated with working-class communities, which labor is supposed to represent, and labor is destroying them through taxation while claiming to care. It's the same pattern we've seen on farmers, on small businesses, on anyone who isn't a public sector worker or a benefits recipient. Labor's economic policies punish enterprise and productivity. They make it harder to run a business, harder to employ people, harder to make a profit, and then they wonder why the economy isn't growing and why people are angry. The fact that Reeves is refusing to budge despite clear evidence of the harm being caused shows either ideological rigidity or political stupidity, maybe both. If she genuinely believes that the transitional measures are sufficient, despite all evidence to the contrary, she's delusional. If she knows